Hi everyone, welcome to the Rice Club. I hope you've been well. Thank you for tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about personal identity. Identity has become such a big part of how we view ourselves and the lens we use to view and interact with our surroundings. Gender, race, ethnicity, and sexuality are the most common identifiers. For many Asian Americans, being Asian is the most common way people see themselves and what they believe others view them as. I'm going to say something that will probably get me exiled from Asian American circles. It probably sounds super controversial. I don't really identify as anything. I don't really identify myself as Asian, or a man, or a straight male. And just to be clear, that doesn't change the fact that I am straight and I'm attracted to women, or someone who has Chinese ancestry. What I mean is, I don't necessarily view or interact with the world primarily through these identities, or any identity at all. I'm mainly going to talk about Asian identity, but this could apply to the most common identifiers in the United States. Just FYI, I don't really have the best grasp on these terms, so I'm going to use a lot of them interchangeably, like cultural heritage, identity, ethnic identity, racial identity. This could apply to one's ethnicity and ancestry, like being Chinese American or Vietnamese American. It could also be something broader, like Asian identity, in terms of how race is used in the United States. Now, I was taught growing up to embrace my cultural identity. I vividly remember the moments in elementary school where we drew and colored pictures of our classmates, family, and community. We would use all the different shades of crayons available to represent our skin colors, and I remember taking turns in class talking about cultural clothing, songs, and foods that our parents passed down to us. We would perform plays in the auditoriums celebrating different cultures like Mexican culture, Chinese culture, etc., through dance and song. We were taught by our teachers from kindergarten onwards about embracing our different backgrounds and how beautiful and unique we were. Now, by the time we got to middle and high school, I think we started formulating our own personal identities, which were usually racially oriented. I had to confront what it meant to be Asian myself in high school. It was weird being a Chinese kid playing football, since Asians weren't known for playing sports. I also had to contend with the harsh reality of having piss-poor grades, which contradicted the expectation of being a smart, successful Asian American in an academically rigorous high school. I wasn't alone in feeling this way. During college, and a bit after, I experimented with poetry writing. I was absolutely terrible at it, and reading it now is like hearing nails on a chalkboard. But it exposed me to spoken word. And a lot of young Asian Americans who were around my age at that time were also grappling with their Asianness as a central theme of their poetry. They talked about finding their roots through interactions with grandparents, embracing their culture through food and language, being bullied at school for their looks, and so on and so on. As I said earlier, identity and being Asian is so deeply ingrained in our psyche that people might find it inconceivable when someone attempts to distance themselves from identifying as such. Definitely happened to me. I'm involved in social circles whose main rallying point is a space for people of Asian descent. I remember years ago, when interacting online with some of these folks, I mentioned that I don't really identify as Asian. And that was probably a very poor choice of words, especially in such a group. What I should have said was, I don't go about my day-to-day thinking about my skin color, my race, or my cultural or ethnic heritage. These things don't influence me, at least not in a way that I'm aware of, or how I go about my normal everyday life. After I said that, I could feel that person's jaw hit the ground. They responded angrily with, quote, "Why are you here then?" To them, A rejection of Asian identity was a rejection of Asian ancestry, an incomprehensible thought. It was as if I attacked their worldview or reality itself. In another contemporary example, take the subject of Japan and Japanese American or mixed Japanese travelers. I went to Japan recently, and I did a lot of research on Reddit and YouTube, and I saw these anecdotal stories and videos from mixed Japanese or Japanese American individuals. These were people who, they traveled to Japan either for school, work, or tourism, and they say they don't fit in. They feel like they're not accepted in Japan because they either don't look quote-unquote Japanese or can never fully assimilate into the culture. Similarly, these individuals don't feel accepted in the country where they've spent most time in or grew up in. Using America as an example, they might not feel like they are truly American, or may have experienced prejudice or racism back home. There's this concept of the perpetual foreigner. No matter what you do, or how long you've stayed in the US, you'll always be perceived as an outsider, a foreigner, a spy, or something other than a citizen of the country. It's pretty damn sad that people feel this way. Not feeling accepted sucks. The thing is, you don't need to go through that. You don't need to worry about your Asian identity. You shouldn't have to worry if you're Asian enough or if you're not doing enough quote-unquote Asian things. I just want to be clear that I'm not attacking people who are concerned with their image, how they present to the world, who want to be accepted, how they view themselves and how others might view them. There's nothing wrong with identifying strongly with your Asian heritage or Asian culture. Neither is there there's also nothing wrong with identifying as a straight male or a gay male or a Christian or a parent or a teacher or anything like that. If that makes you happy and helps you understand the world around you, I'm for it. Me rejecting Asian identity doesn't make me better than anyone. I'm not smarter, healthier, more woke, or more successful. I recognize that this is much easier said than done. It's very easy for me to tell someone, hey, just don't think about it. If you've grown up struggling with your identity, only for someone to say, just forget it, you might be like, what the hell are you smoking, man? What I'm trying to say is, it might be worth distancing yourself from the concept of Asian identity. For me, there wasn't a specific moment that made me say, I'm not going to identify as anything anymore. I didn't wake up one day rejecting Asianness. It was more of a gradual realization over many years that I didn't fit into the stereotypical mode of being an Asian American. I didn't listen to K-pop, J-pop, or EDM. I like my classic rock and 90s rock. I didn't grow up taking piano lessons or going to Chinese school. I don't go to raves. I don't watch anime. I don't go to a Korean church. I'm not a Baptist or an evangelical Christian. These are just some examples. I don't gravitate towards things because it would make me feel more Asian or part of the dominant group. I do things because I'm interested in them or want to try them out. I think one of the most glaring issues that no one talks about is, what does being Asian even mean? Sure, it means someone of Asian descent, but most Asian Americans use it to refer to a set of cultural norms and values associated with being Asian American. Well, who gets to define what being Asian means? What does it mean? If culture has always evolved and changed throughout the years and throughout history, why do we even identify with a very specific idea of it? Let's talk about what is considered being Asian in the United States. You're good at math. You went to a Chinese school or Korean church. You went to a University of California or an Ivy League or UW. You work in tech, finance, law, or medicine. You like boba and EDM. Your family has a small dog named Mochi, Coco, or Boba. I could go on and on. Although these are mainly stereotypes, they're mocked, but also embraced by certain Asian Americans and are even placed upon each other. For example, it's ironic how certain celebrities are treated by Asian Americans who want actors to only portray Asian characters in a positive light. They believe positive depictions can reduce stereotypes and present a better image of Asian Americans to the rest of the country. This is why actors like Steven Yeun and Daniel Dae Kim are well liked. They're praised for playing masculine characters with likable traits, or refusing to play characters with stereotypical Asian accents. Conversely, it seems like people are unhappy and even hostile towards comedians like Bobby Lee or Ken Jeong, calling them minstrels or a disgrace to the Asian community for selling out to mainstream America and making Asians look bad. The debates over which Asian story to tell is ironic. By censoring or approving what stories can or cannot be told, and distinguishing bad Asians versus good Asians, Asian Americans are actually reinforcing the narrow definition of Asianness. I don't go about my day fretting about not being Asian enough. I don't think about needing to reclaim my cultural heritage or to connect with my quote-unquote Asian roots. It just doesn't cross my mind. There's this one YouTube clip where comedian Theo Von asks Korean-American comedian Bobby Lee if he feels Asian in the morning, which is a really ridiculous question. Bobby coolly tells Theo that he thinks about the time, where his phone is, if he should grab coffee, etc., etc. While it's not clear if this conversation between Theo and Bobby is an attempt at deadpan humor, it highlights the mundane day-to-day thoughts of non-identitarianism. Someone might say, well, the beautiful thing about Asian identity is it can be whatever the individual defines it as. And sure, that's true. You can decide what Asian identity means to you. But if Asian identity can be whatever form you take it to be, then it kind of defeats the point of having a specific identity. You can't chase something if it doesn't have a form. At the end of the day, it's you that defines your identity, not some notion of Asianness. There's a sense of liberation and freedom about not being chained to an identity. I think it sidesteps the potential mental anguish that arises when you're confused about who you are or, what it means to fit into America. Now, I'm not saying that by ditching Asian identity, we will suddenly become, mentally healthy and sound and comfortable with our personal self. I think it's an opportunity to understand life in a different way and to think about how society operates in non-identitarian terms. Honestly, it's very freeing. It's sort of like distancing yourself from expectations of how other people in society view you as. In some ways, it kind of enables you to live how you want. To conclude, distancing yourself from identity, specifically Asian identity, opens new opportunities for thinking about society. You can also avoid the confusion and stress associated with finding Asianness or not being Asian enough. I know it's not easy to drop something that's been deeply ingrained in us since birth, but I think it's worth thinking about and trying. Think of it as food for thought. Thanks for listening.